Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to have you all yet another session of VIMARŠHA, session 2. The theme of the session is Transformational Entrepreneurship, and we have our super guest today, Shri Kris Gopalakrishnan sir. He is the co-founder of the large IT global giant Infosys and is the current chairman of Axilor Ventures, a leading angel investor and seed fund of India. So I'll just give you a gist. Before entering into seed funds, many of the multinational private equity companies were not aware or not highly into the seed funds. But once Sir came and accelerated in seed funding, then many of the multinational PE started their own angel investing funds or seed funds. So that's the vision of pioneering a sector or an arena or dimension. So we are extremely honored to have you. So, sir was a CEO and MD of Infosys from 2007 to 2011, and the vice chairman of Infosys from 2011 to 2014. In 2011, Government of India, he received Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian honor from the Government of India. So, sir is extremely, very thought process minded. He is also views a holistic approach from social, economical, and business perspective. So many people can't think from that view. So we are really honored, and it's a privilege to have you at VIMARŠHA session 2, sir. So to just give you a gist to the audience, VIMARŠHA is a fully student-run initiative to make a leadership talk series and to interact with highly revered personalities in business, economics, and industries. So VIMARŠHA is a part of Verge Group of FAME University. Verge Group was like initiated with 3 values: diligence, dharma, and discipline. So it serves investors and businesses for growth strategic decisions. Sir, I'll just hand over it now to our Vice Chancellor of FLAME University, Dr. Dishan Kamdar, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, Akash. Well, welcome audience to yet another session of VIMARŠHA. As you already know, and as mentioned by Akash, VIMARŠHA is a series of leadership talks organized by students at FLAME University. And we continue to be proud of them as they lead such knowledge enhancing initiatives at FLAME. So great work, Akash, and your entire team. Kris, our distinguished speaker today, needs no introduction. We are extremely delighted to have him here with us today. He is the chairman of Axilor Ventures and also has been the co-founder of Infosys. Well, Kris has been known to play an integral role in one of the most prominent game changers in the IT spaces, the IT space long back. And he has definitely, he and his entire team have, put India in the world map. And that was the start of many more similar ventures that were inspired by Infosys. The topic today, transformational entrepreneurship, the meteoric rise of Infosys, is a perfect example of transformational entrepreneurship. It's a perfect example of the impact of transformational entrepreneurship to business, to government, to society, and the economy at large. And we eagerly look forward to the nuggets of knowledge today in this session by Kris. But if you think about the impact of Infosys, they continue to be one of the most influential companies in the IT space today amongst all transnational organizations. Well, Kris has been one of inspiring leaders, if I may, in India, and over and above his contribution in the IT space, being the chairman of Axilor Ventures, he has also made a huge difference in the startup ecosystem in India. He has mentored, he continues to mentor, support, and fund startups and entrepreneurs who have interesting ideas or propositions. Well, I have no doubt that in a matter of time, we'll see a couple of unicorns emerging with his mentorship within Axilor Ventures. Kris has been a great supporter of Flame University, and I remember, meeting him sometimes back in Mumbai in one of the board meetings. And Kris, I remember, the key, we had the entire deck presented to you, and you said, and I remember you saying, cut the crap, prioritize, focus on 2 things that are most important, and do it so well. And that was my big takeaway from that board meeting. And I am pretty sure that you'll have very interesting takeaways for all of us today. And I would put on record my heartfelt appreciation for your willingness to join us today. And over to you, Kris. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kamdar, and thank you, Akash, for persisting with your invitation and giving me this opportunity to talk to all of you. I wish you all very well. I know this is just the beginning of my talk, but the reason I say that is we are faced with a pandemic of unprecedented proportions. I don't think in March, if you ask me, will we be here today? I wouldn't have definitely predicted this, or I wouldn't have even thought about how badly we are going to be impacted. And we are all facing a very challenging period. But as a student, this is actually even more difficult because how do you attend classes, and how does the university run? How do you study? How do you interact with your friends? The university is more than just straight learning. It's about the networks that you build, the camaraderie that you create within the campus, the learning that you have of being independent of your family, your parents, the networks that you create, taking decisions on your own, and so many things actually. And all of that is challenged right now. But I hope that things will improve sooner, and this will be behind us. But this experience is going to be invaluable for all of you. Hopefully, we will not see something like this happen again soon. In my lifetime, it's the first time this has happened, though we have seen multiple downturns. But something of this magnitude is being felt for the first time. So let me talk about transformational leadership. But I want to begin by talking about the pandemic itself, actually. And there is a reason for talking about the pandemic, because the world will be different after the pandemic. Something of this magnitude is definitely going to leave its prints all over our lives. Everyone is going to be affected, and I've captured some of the ways it has impacted, and then I'll tell you actually why I've captured this. First of all, the accelerated transition to digital itself. Be it work from home or telemedicine. Today, if you want to consult your doctor, if you want to get some tests done, etc., telemedicine, using technology to connect with the specialist is the way to go. Even the lab, they will probably send somebody home to pick up the sample, and then the results will be available online. The transition, even my talking to you is digital, right? I didn't have to spend any time traveling. All I had to do was just switch on my computer and Zoom, and then all of you are online, and I'm speaking to you sitting here in Bangalore in my house, actually. So lots and lots of changes have happened. Many industries have been affected, but some industries have benefited. E-commerce has benefited. E-commerce has again accelerated. Media entertainment has benefited because all of us have now moved to consuming more content online. There's unprecedented collaboration. I was just talking to Dr. Kamdar about this actually, between industry, academia, startups, and government. For a change, the government has actually reached out to startups more than ever because the startups are able to do things at a much faster pace, speed. Startups understand this very, very well. Existing businesses, larger businesses are much slower to move because of the various moving parts that they have. Whereas startups can respond very quickly, and the government has leaned on startups during this pandemic, and startups have actually come forward to help the government in many different ways, be it in doing the analysis, be it in terms of logistics. Imagine the PPEs have to be at the right place at the right time. How do you do that? Startups know very well how to do logistics, etc. The Swiggies of the world, etc. have actually figured this out. Collaboration on research, collaboration on vaccine development. There's significant collaboration between civil society and industry to help people who are in the informal sector, the migratory labor, etc. And lastly, I think there is increased localization. I see at least in Bangalore, the farmers bringing their produce close to a apartment complex or close to a residential area and selling all their produce and then going back actually direct from the farm to the consumer. I see this happening, and these are things which once we experience this, we may think, why not continue these things? And the farmer also benefits significantly, eliminating all the middlemen, etc. Second is speed, actually. Not just science at speed, but everything at speed. There is a increased awareness that we need to respond very quickly. And this awareness is within the government, within industry, everybody actually. But just specifically focusing on science alone, we need to understand this virus, and we still have not understood this virus. It's just about 4 months or 5 months old. But in spite of all the scientists around the world looking at it, we still have not understood it fully. And every day we are learning new things about the virus. But imagine this, a small thing which you can't see, which is micrometers in size, micrometers, less than a strand of hair, actually, much less than a strand of hair, is holding the entire world, all countries, all governments, all people, to ransom in some sense, actually. And it's an amazing science fiction. If it was not real, unfortunately, it's real. It would be a wonderful science fiction story. And if you have not watched Contagion, please watch that movie. It's an old movie, but they predicted this actually in some sense. The race to find cures and vaccine, again, we are accelerating that. Typically, a vaccine development takes 3-4 years. We are hoping that within the next few months, it will be ready. And large number of non-peer-reviewed papers and almost 24,000 peer-reviewed papers published to date on this virus itself, which is again an amazing number of papers, global collaboration on this, and all because this is hurting everybody. And the fissures in society, again, are things that we need to keep in mind. It's very important for us to look at this, one, from a humanitarian perspective, from a social justice perspective, but there's an opportunity here also. The poor are affected badly. People working in informal sector are affected. The whole digital divide, the ability to participate in productive activities, in learning, all depend on your access to internet, your access to a user device, a mobile phone or a computer, etc. It's not available to everybody, and hence the digital divide is actually being amplified by this, and we need to address this. Similarly, older people and people with comorbidities are more at risk. The people who are older are at a higher risk at dying. People with comorbidities, people with hypertension, blood pressure, diabetes, again they are at more at risk, and this gives us some thought about healthy aging. How do we take care of ourselves in normal times, etc. There's a two-speed economy right now. Certain businesses are definitely more affected. If you're in travel, tourism, let's say airline industry, hospitality, you're severely affected. There is no revenue, actually, no business in some sense. But there are businesses that are benefiting, like I told you about media, etc., e-commerce. They are actually seeing acceleration. I just read that in the last 12 weeks, Amazon in the US has seen its business go up by 4%. Given their size, given how competitive that marketplace is, typically companies take maybe multiple years to actually grow 4%. Amazon grew in about 3 months by 4%. It's an amazing story, actually, and that's what the virus has provided to Amazon. Certain businesses are still getting investments, and we saw that if you are in some of these businesses that are benefiting e-commerce or telecom or internet, etc., you're getting investments. India saw about $16 billion of investments during the COVID times, which is not bad, actually. But then these are the businesses that benefit from situations like this. We have seen that the healthcare systems are broken, both in developed and developed economies. It's very strange to see simultaneously the impact it has had on the healthcare system in the US, for example, and in India. In India, we have actually done much better job in keeping the number of deaths at a much lower rate. The per capita number of deaths is significantly lower than many other countries. So these are some of the observations that I have, and I feel that these provide actually opportunities for entrepreneurship. How can we build a business to solve some of these problems, address some of these problems? Where are the opportunities? And that's where I want to start. When do you start a venture? You have an idea about a problem a society faces, and you believe that you have a solution, and that gives you an opportunity to create a new business, a new venture, and solving pain points in a group of people, quote unquote customers, is what a venture is all about. So you have an idea. Second, you have a technology which you believe can be applied to a problem to solve that problem. So, for example, a technology could be a vaccine, solution that you have for COVID. It could be a technology for telemedicine, right? Now, of course, you're solving the issue of consultation during COVID times. It can be used to consult in remote areas, etc., when the pandemic is gone, right? So that's the second way to think about a new venture. You have a technology that, in fact, can be used to solve a problem. So in some sense, you will then use the technology to get to an idea which solves a problem. And last is, you have a passion. You feel that I want to do something. I want to run my own business. I want to be independent. I want to build a great company. Dr. Kamda talked about Infosys, a great company like Infosys. And then you will say, okay, now, okay, I have this passion. Now, where do I start? Look for an idea, look for a technology, and things like that. So I gave you some of the opportunities that the COVID period is providing. Now let's look at what are some of the technologies that are available for you to leverage to create a venture. And most of the ventures today, have leveraged technology effectively to create a solution. And I will come back to this concept of technology enabled businesses a little bit later on my presentation. The future is not a linear extrapolation of the past. In fact, many a time you will find that the future is very different. Just look at telephone penetration, right? 1992, 26, 27 years back, we had hardly any telephones, 2 million telephones in the country. Today, we have probably 750 million telephones, and you can get telephones just walking into a store, and 5 minutes you can get a telephone connection. In 1992, it would have probably taken you 2 years to get a telephone connection. Significant change. It's a disruptive change that has happened in how people look at telephone. It's not fixed line, it's mobile. Everyone in the family has their own mobile devices, lots and lots of differences. So, things like constraints being removed or a constraint being added, it's of course influenced by leaders and entrepreneurs, and that's why entrepreneurs are very important to society, because they change the future. They have a significant impact on the future, the quality of life, etc. A crisis can accelerate change, and that's the reason why I started by saying that the world is going to be different after the pandemic, very, very different. New leadership will emerge, etc. And we are always, as human beings, the history of human life in this world, history of life in this world is looking for a faster, better, cheaper way of doing things using better tools and technology. And tools and technology are the means to creating faster, better, cheaper world. I'll again take an example from the IT industry because I belong to the IT industry. We have had multiple waves of technology being introduced. So when hardware was the dominant, let's say, parameter for competition, the mainframe wave, let us say, because of hardware was limited, access was limited, only professionals were able to use hardware, etc. The leaders who emerged were companies like IBM, DEC, HP. DEC doesn't exist anymore. IBM and HP are there. HP is now broken up. When personal computers were introduced, new leaders emerged. So the key point I want to highlight here is when there's a transition in technology, new leadership emerges. And some survive, some actually don't survive when the next wave comes. So the power shifted from hardware to software, and companies like Microsoft, SAP, Oracle came. When the networking got introduced, Cisco came, Juniper came. Internet got introduced, Amazon came. Google came. Amazon, of course, is an e-commerce company, retailer, leveraging this technology. But Google is a pure tech company. They provide search as a service, aggregate all the data, all the information that's there, and then provide that as a search. But their revenue model is through advertisement, etc. 97% of the revenue comes from ad, etc. When mobile phones, a new form factor, which is personal, which you can carry around, new leadership emerged. Samsung is a new leader, but Apple is an existing company which actually reinvented itself. Apple almost died in the 90s. They brought back Steve Jobs, and there's a lot of stories about Steve Jobs. I won't go into that. They brought back Steve Jobs, and then he made his bet on iPod and iPhone and became a very successful company. This is the company with the highest market cap, $1.6 trillion, bigger than, 70% of the countries in the world in some sense. So, I can't imagine a business being so large. And lastly, when social media came about, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So every disruption like this in technology brings new leadership, new opportunities for many, many things. I won't go into that because that is a topic for a lecture by itself. New operating systems come, from, IBM times, its mainframe operating system like OS 360. Then Microsoft introduced DOS, Windows. Apple came up with Mac OS. Then mobile phones came, Android and iOS. So there are so many opportunities to create actually new products and new services when technology changes and new leadership emerges. The key point is new leadership emerges. Small companies, startup companies become leaders in the future. We have so many emerging technologies right now in our midst. And this is actually the best time, I would say, as far as I can remember, to actually think about entrepreneurship, starting new business, etc. Because so much new emerging technologies are there, and these are broad technologies which can affect multiple industries, change life in many ways. So I'll just pick one or two things actually. Genetics, for example, DNA sequencing, etc., can completely revolutionize how healthcare is being provided. Looking at personalized healthcare, where each person can be treated differently based on their underlying genetic makeup, underlying, information about themselves. We can also, using IoT, track every individual every second of their life from birth to death, and the huge amount of data that you can look at. And probably there are biomarkers which indicate what is wrong with you, when that happened, etc., by looking at this data. All of this is going to be exploited to change healthcare to become better. AI and ML, another horizontal technology that's going to impact everything that we do, because without the ability of leveraging computing power to derive information, knowledge from the data, we will not be able to use this data. Amazing amount of data is being created, but how will you leverage this to create information out of that? And it has to be using machine learning, etc. And the last thing is, we are at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, and the fourth industrial revolution is said to have started in the 2014-15 time frame, where today we can connect physical things, we can connect digital, that's the computing. We can also connect biological systems. Wearable devices is an example of how your human body is connected. Elon Musk talks about actually downloading music to your brain and taking information from your brain and connecting it to the internet, etc. So we are living in a world of science fiction, and it's only left to our imagination and creativity of what is possible. Every sector will get impacted because of that. Startups will emerge with new business models and solutions, and new leadership will emerge. Many companies will fail. In the list of things, Digital Equipment Corporation was the second largest computer company way back in the 60s and the 70s, but does not exist today. So new leadership will emerge, and this will impact every industry. And I've given here some examples, but every industry is going to change. Healthcare, media and entertainment. Media and entertainment, for example, we watch now most of the shows on our personal devices asynchronously. That means we don't watch it live. We don't wait for when it's going to be transmitted by the TV station or something like that. We watch it on our mobile devices at our convenience, recorded shows and things like that. We can interact with our friends while watching. Lots and lots of differences, changing ways in which we consume content. Financial services have changed, especially in India. India has been one of the leaders in how financial services is being transformed. I also believe that this is India's century. 20th century is US's century. US dominated that and became almost 24-25% of the global economy. Right now, it's about 19% of the global economy. India is about 5-6% of the global economy. But we have the opportunity because we are growing rapidly. Our per capita income is going up. We have the second largest consumer base. We have the opportunity to become $10 trillion economy in the next 20 years and $20 trillion in the next 40 years. Per capita income at $10 trillion will be $10,000. 4 times what it is, 5 times what it is today. Imagine the amount of wealth that will be created from about $3 trillion to $10 trillion, $7 trillion over the next 20 years. That's the period you are all going to become productive. You will join the workforce. And this is what is expected of you. This is where your action will make a difference. And this is very, very important. India will become a middle income country, enormous wealth, completely transformed. I have seen transformation in the last 25 years, but it will be nothing compared to what we are going to see in the next 20 years. But the question is, what kind of India will you build? Will you build? Because I'm expecting you to build this actually. We want India to be different. See, the world today is not a nice world, unfortunately. Even democracies are struggling to survive today. So we want an India that's equitable, sustainable, inclusive. We want new models for our cities. The cities should be livable. Healthcare should be accessible for all. We need to look at regenerative agriculture. You know, the carbon content in soil is 50% of what it was 30, 40 years back. We are, you know, everything, all our precious resources are being lost actually, and we want to be number one in research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. In entrepreneurship, we've reached about number 3, but we want to be number 1 in research and innovation. The place that US occupies, why not India? And this is actually my request to you, my ambition that you will actually fulfill this dream. So I want to come to transformational entrepreneurship very briefly. Entrepreneurship, I believe, is going to play an important role in making the dream of this new India come true. Entrepreneurs are the ones which bring new products, new innovations, new businesses, new engines of growth, new jobs. Everything that I can think of to create this new India will be done by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. It's the process of designing, launching, and running a new business, along with its risk to make a profit. Entrepreneur, of course, that's in the context of the business. In the larger context, entrepreneurs are the people who solve problems for society with limited resources. Your resources are always going to be limited. So how can you use those limited resources optimally to solve that problem? And that's what an entrepreneur is. Entrepreneur organizes capital, talent, other resources to make an invention into commercially viable innovation. Innovation is actually invention plus commercialization. Right? So we need faster, better, cheaper solutions, and entrepreneurship is key to make that happen. And what is transformation? So transformation is about making fundamental changes to society, fundamental changes in business, eliminate some of the issues, problems, pain that the business is facing. So for example, if the business is growing very slowly, through a transformation, we accelerate that growth. If the business is struggling to introduce new products, through a transformation, we figure out how we can introduce products faster. Society similarly, you know, how can we address the issue of education? We have just seen the introduction of the national education policy, new education policy. Now, how can we leverage that to transform our education system and transform our society? Now, how do you then combine these two together? So transformational entrepreneurs earn their name by creating innovative solutions to the world's biggest problems that are scalable, sustainable, systematic. So it's just not about creating large businesses, but also solve societal problems. And that's what transformational entrepreneurship is all about. There's a paper about this, which is written by Max Marmer, which I refer to here. So, you know, you want to look at significant long-term societal impact and significant economic impact. Means, you know, it is a very flourishing, large business, and that top right quadrant is transformational entrepreneurship. Vis-a-vis, on the bottom left quadrant is the small business, where the economic impact is minimal and societal impact is minimal. It's logical, right? if your societal impact is very large, you are actually a social entrepreneurship or you are a transformational entrepreneurship. So, but to be a transformational entrepreneurship, you have to create a sustainable impact, in a sustainable business with significant economic impact also. There are two types of entrepreneurs, one who creates small and medium enterprises, another one who creates innovation-driven enterprises or technology-driven enterprises. There's nothing wrong. The economy is full of actually small and medium enterprises. The backbone of any economy is small and medium enterprises. 70% of the jobs, 60 to 70% of the jobs are created by small and medium enterprises. And they're the backbone of any economy, as I talked about. They address a local, regional market, small market. Innovation may not be necessary. It could be just a shop at the corner, or it could be a local ice cream business or a bakery, or it could be a small training institute. Anything you can talk about. You're let's say a building contractor, being able to build nice buildings in a locality, right? All of these are small, medium enterprises. They're typically family businesses or businesses with very little external capital, profitable. It has to be profitable, otherwise they won't survive, and they typically grow at a linear rate. In India, the average employment in business is 20 employees. That's the small and medium enterprises. An innovation-driven enterprise addresses large markets because they can, because of the technology especially, they can actually scale, they can reach with disproportionate investment. So it is based on some sort of innovation. It takes in wide array of external capital, especially from the venture community. It's venture funded. It grows exponentially and may start with losing money. So you have seen many companies start with losing money, but at some point they have to make money to survive and to grow. There is another category which is very important when you look at starting a business, business to consumer versus business to business. And there are differences. Business to business has to be nurtured differently. It's sales driven, relationship driven. Selling cycle is typically longer term. The buying decision is planned, logical, based on needs. Whereas when it comes to like business to consumer business, it's marketing driven, relationship is short term, selling cycle is short term. And decisions are emotional, typically based on want and desire. And you can actually influence now. And that's what you will see, right? When Amazon says, okay, you bought this book, but people who bought this book also bought these books, right? Or your friends bought these books or things like that. They try to influence you using emotions and things like that. And that's how these differences are very, very important when you think about starting a business. I will skip this very quickly because of lack of time, but basically in India, the impact of startups is about new products, new services, new business models, etc. And annually, we are creating about 4,000 to 5,000 actually startups now. The number of employees are small in number. So if you look at the total number, it's about 50,000 startups active, 160 billion plus in investment, and about 600,000, 6 lakh jobs. So the number of jobs is actually not very much, but the feel-good factor, right, especially among students, the ability to introduce new products and new services, innovation, etc., is key here. Now, as our startups become very large, they will start employing large number of people, but we have, this whole startup area is nascent. It's only 10 years old in India, and the impact is still more from a perception, emotion, passion, etc., rather than actual impact in terms of GDP, in terms of employment, etc., but will be in the future. Because I want to now spend a little bit time here before I close. Entrepreneurship is about being disciplined and following a process. There is a method to this madness, though there is a lot of luck involved also. There is a lot of gut feel, etc. sometimes decisions have to be made with incomplete information, but there is a process, and the successful entrepreneurs are those that actually take care of all known unknowns very carefully and don't make those mistakes, and so that you can actually take care of the unknown unknowns. So you should have your time available for the unknown unknowns, because there's so many things that are unknown actually. So the leverage the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we have a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. Most institutes today have a accelerator or an incubator, have mentors, angel investors. They have, they have mentors. So that entrepreneur ecosystem has become very, very vibrant in India, and that's definitely an advantage that you have today compared to 10 years back or 20 years back, or 30 years back. There was no concept of actually going for venture funding, etc. There is a process, as I said, and following a process increases the odds for success. Why do you do an MBA? Most of the things there are, in some sense, common sense, some people will say, but it's about the methods, the models, the tools that you can use. It increases the odds for success. And on the right side, some of the stages, you start with the idea. So you validate your idea by sharing it with your friends, with some of your colleagues, with investors, secure seed funding. And secure funding is a continuous process. Create a minimum viable product and then do customer validation. It's a very, very important activity. You have to make sure that you know who your customer is. You know that the customer will pay for it. You can create a value to the customer that you can derive value. Out of the value, you can derive the price. Market validation, how big is the market? Where are these customers? How do you scale this up? Unit economics is very important, because ultimately the business has to be profitable. Before you scale, make sure that you're not losing every time you sell, or at least understand where you're losing, how you're losing, and how we can make up for that actually. There are defined stages with gates and milestones, and that's why people talk about angel investment, seed investment, Series A, B, C, D, IPO, etc. And each of these stages has separate gates and milestones to be achieved, etc., etc. And you will be measured against this. The team is very, very important, because the team makes the difference actually. The founders make the difference. Take all the help you can. Reach out and take all the help you can. Success factors, timing is important, and you can be with a new technology at the wrong time at the wrong place, it will fail. So it's nothing to do with you, but the timing has to be perfect. Idea that solves a significant problem to a large number of customers, addressing a large market is important, especially when you look at innovation-driven enterprises actually. Great execution is important. Idea is only as good as what is written in the paper, nothing else. It's just a paper, right? Execution is what makes a difference. Great unique economics may make as much profit as possible. Becoming viral and spreading through word of mouth is important, because it reduces the customer acquisition process. Following a defined process is very, very important. And lastly, I will say this actually, before you think about doing this, make sure that you can run the marathon, you can take the hits, because especially when it comes to the innovation-driven enterprise, the startup, more probability is that it will fail, or it will become a small and medium enterprise, right? Very few actually succeed hugely. And last of the point is forgo short-term gratification, because the success will happen over time. It's a marathon, right? So it will happen over longer time. It's not a sprint, definitely. And the sprint is probably by accident rather than by plan. It takes time to build a great business, and you have to wait to become great. As an aside, I will also say this actually, suddenly, you will realize that you want to get married next year and things like that. Think about starting a business, because building a family, etc., adds more responsibilities on you, puts more requirements on the money that you have, etc. Maybe you need to delay becoming an entrepreneur. You may want to take up a job for some time, get some experience, etc., and think about entrepreneurship much later. So wishing you all the very best. We need entrepreneurs, and there's a great opportunity. India is the place. With several technology waves behind you, which will help you ride this wave. And this is probably the best time I can think of to become an entrepreneur. Your training at Flame will help you. The resources, the ecosystem that exists will help you, and leverage all of that. And if you take this path, be a good company, a good, great company. That's very, very important. We need those companies. Wishing you all the very best. Thank you. And now I think we can take some questions. We have some time.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your valuable insights, sir. So we had a lot of insights ranging from sectors, Indian perspectives, Indian ecosystems, and your experience on how you built your entrepreneurial ecosystem in India. So I'll ask some questions from my side, and to all the participants, please put in your questions so that after my questions, 2-3 questions from panelist sides gets over, I can ask questions from your side. So my first question is on the most fundamental side. You co-founded Infosys, which became the giant IT global hub, and in a way you started the entrepreneurial ecosystem of India back then. And now you are starting the Axilor Ventures, and you are pioneering the seed funding and angel investing in India. So I think the most fundamental thing behind both the firms is your vision to create long-term sustainable value. So what was your vision back then, and what is your vision now?
So when we started Infosys, the vision was to create a respectable business, a respected business sitting here in India. The world was very different. India was very different. No internet, no mobile phones, no Facebook, no nothing, right? Way back in the 80s. And India was a closed economy. We couldn't even travel properly, because the government would give you some money and you have to come back and report back how you spend the money to the government. Very, very different period, and no venture capital, nothing. So our vision was to create a respected business serving clients around the world. We wanted to be a world-class business. We felt very passionately that we can create a world-class business, and remember that it's a new area. So that's why we were confident that we could create a world-class business developing software for multinational corporations sitting here in India. The technology for doing online connectivity, etc., came much later, in the late 80s. 89 is when we got the first telecom link to the US. But we had anticipated this and created this business. Today, the vision is very, very different. The vision, as I stated here, I want this to be India's century. I want India to grow much faster. I want India to become a prosperous, a wealthy nation, a middle-class country. I want India to be #1 in research and innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's the dream. Now, of course, we have a large number of people who can make it happen. And that's why, I want to share this dream, and I hope that this becomes all of your dreams also, so that we can make it happen.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. So my next question is on the operational front. So most respected Flames board member Durgesh sir once talked in a conference that Infosys at one time was hiring 100 people per day. So it's a mind-boggling number, sir. So I want to ask on the scalability front. So how do you see today's startup ecosystem? Because we see many statistics reports that 10 out of 7, 6 startups fail because of funding or because of scalability, because their products or services can't scale beyond a level. So how do you think that scalability will bring a point from your experience and exposure to Infosys and now in Axilor Ventures?
So I'm actually very, very gung-ho about the startup ecosystem, the startup founders, the startup companies. Infosys took 23 years to hit the first $1 billion. You look at Flipkart, right? In 10 years, they actually built a huge multi-billion-dollar business and sold it for $16 billion in 10 years, right? In 2017, they started in 2007 or something like that, right? So I believe that today's founders and startups are significantly better placed, and they have better knowledge, better skills, better ecosystem for doing things faster, and they are thinking global and things like that. So they're quite ambitious. Many of our startups have gone global already, and so I'm very confident in saying that today's founders will do better and will create much larger enterprises. Now, your second part of the question is about startups failing, right? And this is because, see, when you think about innovation-driven enterprises, these enterprises that are technology-enabled and scales rapidly, the first mover or the one which does a much better job gets advantage, and the followers actually are at a disadvantage in terms of funding, in terms of market penetration. They need to spend more money, more capital. Everything is more difficult for them. It's a winner-take-all market in some sense. And that's the reason why the third or the fourth or the fifth startup actually fails. And I would quickly pivot at that point to become a niche startup, a small and medium enterprise, unless I have some unique product or a service which can disrupt the incumbent. That's also possible, right? So if that's the case, then you go ahead and still try. You will also get funded. But if you don't have, if you are just a follower, you will not get funded and you will lose momentum, and you will lose, you won't have money, you will run out of money, and you will have to wind up.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. So my next question is on what do you look into startups when you invest in them? And to just further accelerate the point, what's your view on preserving cash on one side and churning of funds on the other side in a startup journey from, let's say, pre-Series A funding to Series D or Series E fundings?
So to answer your second question first, I feel that once you create a minimum viable product, you do customer validation, you have to introspect at that point and say, do I want to become a small and medium enterprise, or do I want to become an innovation-driven enterprise which scales rapidly, where I take external funding and things like that, right? It is very, very important to introspect and take the right decision at that point. If you don't have anything unique, if you don't have a unique insight into the market or a competitive advantage, you're better off becoming a small and medium enterprises. There's nothing wrong. 70% of the companies are small and medium enterprises. You are your own boss. You're profitable. You don't require any more funding, and you can have a healthy life. You can create good jobs and be a good corporate citizen in the country. So that's the route I would take, rather than risk everything to try and scale up and burn investors' money also in doing so. If you don't have a clear edge, and you will run out of steam at some point. So now come to the first part of your question, burning cash, right? You burn cash only if you are first, or you have some unique edge, or your model is different, and you are the first doing this, etc. Today, if you want to compete with a Uber or Ola or something like that, it's very difficult because they have a significant advantage in terms of brand, market penetration, funding. Yeah, they're well funded and all that stuff, and it's very difficult to penetrate that. So you have to think about a twist to the Uber model or Ola model, which will disrupt their business. Then it's possible to scale up. But there is nothing wrong with says that I'm going to run a Uber in, let's say let's say a tier 2 city where Uber doesn't exist today. So you can be hyper local. You can actually do a hyper local model for let's say particular service of providing transportation. I don't know, maybe you create a business around moving older people around, right? You say that, okay, I can take care of older people, it's wheelchair enabled, I am secure, you can track it on GPS, etc. Special purpose vehicle. You can think of a new business model there, and you can be hyper local, and maybe nobody has thought about this model. You can scale it up tomorrow globally.
Right, sir. My last question to you would be, I'll borrow this question again from our Vice Chancellor, sir. You always ask dignitaries, what are the 3 pieces of advice you will give to the youths of India?
One, think big. You have the opportunity to completely transform India to become a global economy, this to become the India's century. And there's absolutely nothing that you don't have to make that happen. Okay. There's a famous quote by Steve Jobs, which I normally put in my presentation as the last slide. In this presentation, it's not there, but basically it says that everything that you see around you, everything has been created by people just like you. Right? Once you realize that, there's nothing that's going to prevent you. You must have the confidence to change things around. The second piece of advice is, in today's world, technology is the key disruptor or disrupting tool, right? So you need to be adept at use of technology. You need to be adept at, as individual in your business, in solving problems, etc. We need to leverage technology. So you need to become adept at use of technology and become. It has to be second nature to you, actually. And it's very, very important that everything that we do, how do you set up your house, or how do you set up your room, or how do you set up your classroom? Everything uses technology today, and we need to be adapted to technology. Have a passion for anything new and play with it and enjoy it and learn about it, etc. And the last piece is also about that really. The amount of knowledge in the world is doubling every 2 years. Imagine that. All the knowledge that was created in the world from the beginning of time to now, same amount of knowledge will be created in the next 2 years. How is somebody going to keep with it? Right? So 2 things here. You have to read every single day. You have to learn. You have to, enroll in continuing education. You have to refresh yourself, reinvent yourself, etc., etc. And second is you have to leverage technology to keep up with it. Why is AI very important? Machine learning important for every profession, because you will have a AI tool with you in whatever you do. We don't realize that there is a lot of AI in our mobile phones. It reminds us things. It tells you how much time you slept. Everything it tells you now. Some AI is running in the background. You can use Siri, or you can use the Amazon Echo or something like that to give commands. It recognizes your voice. It's lots and lots of tools today have AI and ML embedded in it. And so we need to be adept, and we need to learn, and we need to use technology to do well in life.
Thank you, sir. I'll just take 2-3 quick questions from the audience side. So Prem Kumar Parveshwaram is asking, how does one create a culture of innovation and institutionalize innovation in an organization? Would love to hear from you what Infosys did on this front.
See, there are 2-3 things that you can do. One, there is innovation that's top down. So, where you create a research and development department, you say that, your revenue for any year must consist of at least, let's say, 20% or 30% revenue from products or services that was introduced in the last 3 years. So you renew yourself constantly, you drive yourself, you measure yourself. So this is top down. Then there is bottom up innovation, where you tell every employee in the company that you must come up with a new idea and present your ideas to your manager, your boss, and then we bubble this up. Actually, the best ideas are recognized, some reward is given, and there are forums where these can be presented, people get appreciation, and the best of these will actually become tomorrow's organizational ideas, top-down ideas, because then you make that person in charge of implementing this idea, so they get recognition, they get a budget, they get funds, maybe they become head of this unit, etc., etc. And so you bubble up bottom up innovation and things like that. And the third is you work with startups, you work with companies outside, and have a very vibrant ecosystem of bringing innovation from outside to inside. There are a lot more innovations outside the organization than inside. And it is important to have a methodology by which you can do that. P&G, for example, Procter & Gamble, said that 50% of our new products must come from outside the company. Research done outside the company, not research done inside the company. And that is also very, very important to create a organization that actually benefits and values and has created a culture of innovation. And the leadership is important because all this happened from the top.
This is a very special question coming from Sanjana Thakkar. She's asking, what is your advice to late-age entrepreneurs, people after 20 years of work experience or plus, who wants to create an impact and dive into entrepreneurship and innovation?
So there are two, I strongly believe there are two periods in your life where entrepreneurship is right for you. One, just after you pass out or when you're a student, right? You have your family support, family takes care of your expenses mostly, and you have no, let's say, what is the right word? No dependence, right? You're probably not married, etc. No dependence, no worry in life, and you are a free bird, right? So you can actually take any risk. Some of the people, not all the people, because if your family is dependent on you actually bringing, a salary home, then you probably can't. But some students can afford. So that's one period you can become an entrepreneur. The second period I believe you can become an entrepreneur is when you've completed 20 years of working for somebody else, etc. The reason I say this is typically in 20 years, you're married, your children have passed the school going age, they've reached college, and they are independent, so you don't have to take care of them, look after them, etc. Plus, you have a next step. Actually, you have saved money and things like that, and you want to look at something new in your life. You want to have an adventure in your life. You want to do something different. You want to, some of the things that you wish you had opportunity to do, now you want to explore. So that's the best time actually for a second career, a second opportunity to become an entrepreneur. So 20 years, I would really, if you meet all those criteria, I would really look at becoming an entrepreneur at that point.
Sure, sir. I'll take the last question. Harini Satish is asking, sir, with the current bleak predictions of the economy post the pandemic, how do you see this impacting the startup culture?
So fortunately, the startups have fared through this downturn reasonably well. See, startup or the founders are quite resilient. They are very, very optimistic people, resilient people. They many of them have a plan B, fallback option, etc. And they're also supported by investors. So by and large, the startup community is okay. It's the people who have not got funded yet, they're hurting a little bit because you don't want to look at somebody brand new right now. So if you are just becoming an entrepreneur, you have to have a very, very disruptive idea or a disruptive business model to get funded today. But I think the situation will change because, as I said in my presentation, there are new opportunities that are arising now for becoming an entrepreneur. New businesses can be created, and if you're one of those, maybe you will get funded. Funding is not, money is not a problem. Good ideas will get funded even today. There's a lot of money around to fund, especially with all the money that governments have pumped into the economy, not in India, not just in India, but around the world. There's lots and lots of money to fund startups today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the valuable and so amazing insights and exposures that we have got. Before handing it to our Director of Flame Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, I just want to thank my VIMARŠHA team and our Board of Advisors, Vice Chancellor Sir, Darshan Sir, for making this event a great success. And for the people who are asking, is the recording available after this webinar? So my answer is you can see it on the YouTube channel of Flame University. It will be posted in some time, maybe tomorrow. So you can watch it there. Thank you. Now I'll hand over it to our Darshan sir, the Director of Flame Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. He's doing a lot of things in startup and guiding us and inspiring us to promote the startup culture. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you, Kris sir. I know we have run a little bit late, so I'll keep this really, really short. Here are some key insights that I got from this webinar. COVID-19 has affected the society at large, but also created opportunities. There is a digital divide, but then we have to use technology in order to bring some parity over the next few years. Future is not a linear extrapolation of the past, but rather an integration of the past experiences, inventions, innovations, combined with today's circumstances. 21st century can be India's century. We have the opportunity, we need to grab it, and we need to build an equitable, sustainable, and a livable country and a world, society at large. This is what I really like about transformational entrepreneurship as you defined it. It is high societal impact and high economic impact. And when you're in that quadrant is where really transformation takes place. To conclude, entrepreneurship will transform India. Just if I may add a little bit over here, at the Flame Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we are running an accelerator program, an incubator program, and we've recently launched a 1-year postgraduate program in entrepreneurship and innovation in collaboration with Babson, Wadhwani Foundation, Ideas to Impact, TIE, and many others, right? So many are contributing for us to take or help aspiring entrepreneurs to succeed, whatever success may be, whether it is funded or whether it is a lifestyle business. Now that being said, a lot more questions. This session could go on. This is probably the second or the third time I've attended your session, and every time it's a very, very insightful session. So again, thank you for your time. Akash and rest of the team have been absolutely phenomenal at this, and we really appreciate your support to enhance everyone's learning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you all. Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye.